Thanks to hugely popular films like Jurassic Park, people are now very, very aware of the giant dinosaurs that used to roam our planet millions and millions of years ago. And we're very glad that they're not around anymore. But what about the giant extinct predators that weren't dinosaurs, that haven't had their chance in the spotlight, that we should also be very glad aren't around anymore? Today we count down 5 giant, extinct, underappreciated predators that might have lived in your backyard some years ago. So this top 5 is going to be a little bit different than my usual one. I mean, if this works out really well, we'll probably keep doing more of these. But instead of talking about like top 5 beginner pet reptiles or top 5 of something with my own animals, we're going to be doing 5 giant extinct predators that obviously I don't have because they're extinct. So we're joined today by Roxy, my Cuban rock iguana, who's probably the closest thing, at least in appearance, to a dinosaur. Which brings us to really the only rule for this top 5, and that'll be there will be no true dinosaurs. No T-Rex, no velociraptors, no baryonyx, nothing like that. These will be extinct birds and reptiles and mammals, etc. Arachnophobia is one of the most widespread fears on the planet. There are a bunch of people scared of spiders and tarantulas. That's not scary. That's cute and fluffy. You know what's unnerving? A scorpion the size of a house cat. Meet the Pulmonoscorpius. Now, the largest living scorpion in today's world is the giant forest scorpion out of India. It's a very, very big arachnid, but it maxes out at about 20 to 23 centimeters long. The Pulmonoscorpius could reach lengths of 70 centimeters long, which is 2.5 feet. This scorpion existed in the early Carboniferous period, with about 347 to about 331 million years ago in what is now Scotland. This region was dominated by dense tropical swamps, very unlike the modern day Scotland, and the air had a much higher oxygen content, about 35% compared to about 20 to 21% for today. This allowed certain animal groups, like terrestrial arthropods, to evolve to be much larger than you'd find today. Because of this, this time period was dominated by giant amphibians and invertebrates, animals that don't breathe quite the same as most animals do, so they wouldn't be able to nearly attain anything like that size today. And the scientific name for a pulmono actually translates to breathing scorpion. Now, obviously, the lethality of this venom is impossible to tell because this animal existed so long ago and venom isn't really going to fossilize. But there's a few kind of like tricks and rules of thumbs that we can use with modern day scorpions to kind of help us guess what this venom was like. With modern day scorpions, a good kind of rule of thumb is scorpions with large pedipalps, which is the pincers, usually means that they crush their food. Now, kind of like my Asian forest scorpion here. While a scorpion with little needle-like pincers and a very big bulbish stinger, this usually means they rely more on venom. Now, this isn't 100% accurate. There are some scorpions that have like little pincers but are not that dangerous venom-wise, but again, it's just kind of a good general rule of thumb. The Pulmonoscorpius had kind of smaller, thinner pincers than you would typically expect for a scorpion of that size, like our modern day big scorpions like the emperor scorpion or the forest scorpions. So this means it probably did rely more on venom than crushing with its pincers, but again, we can't accurately tell. But with the size of this scorpion and the potential potency of its venom, that means it wasn't going after small little bugs like crickets like I feed my scorpion. This thing probably was taking down fairly large vertebrates like probably rabbit-sized, guinea pig-sized, something like that. Considered the world's most venomous modern-day scorpion species is the Indian red scorpion. It's not a very big scorpion, but its venom packs a huge punch. It is fatal to children and subadults, and for adults, it's usually not fatal if you're treated, but it is going to be very, very, very painful. And this scorpion is only 6 centimeters long. That's only 1/3 the size of the giant forest scorpion. And like I said, the Pulmonoscorpius is 70 centimeters long. So if this scorpion relied mostly on venom, that would have been a very, very, very dangerous venom. The only thing really big enough in this time period to mess with them would have been larger reptiles and amphibians, and then other giant scorpions. The world's deadliest bird species is the cassowary. It's from Indonesia and Australia. It gets about 6 feet tall, weighs just over 100 pounds, has very, very powerful legs for kicking, and very sharp nails for slicing. It's like a modern day bird velociraptor. Meet Big Bird's hulked out cousin, the terror bird. This avian colossus stood 10 feet tall in the largest species and could weigh up to 400 pounds. The terror birds belong in the family Phorusrhacidae, and they lived from about 62 million years ago to around 2 million years ago. For most of this time period, South America, where these birds lived, was a giant isolated island that was dominated by large herbivores. Towards the end of their reign, however, Central America actually started raising up out of the ocean, and it became a land bridge uniting North and South America, which allowed a huge number of species to start migrating north or south. Now, while most of these species stayed in South America, there were a few that did start wandering north, the most notable one being the Titanus, which is actually the kind of most recent last terror bird species in the fossil record. They've wandered all the way up into North America, and they have fossil remains found everywhere from Texas all the way over to Florida. They were mostly tall, flightless birds, and they have a modern-day distant cousin called the Surima. With a long neck and a massive axe-like beak ending in a sharp tip, this animal was one of the apex terrestrial predators of its time and excelled in ripping flesh from carcasses. Scientists believe that the max speed some of the faster species could reach was about 30 miles per hour, which isn't as fast as like the ostrich's 40 miles per hour, but it's still very impressive for an extinct, giant, non-flighted bipedal predator. And don't be mistaken, the terror bird was an absolute apex predator force to be reckoned with. It's believed that they'd kick their prey with those powerful tree trunk-like legs, stomp on them, and then hold them down as they took that dangerous giant axe of a beak and made strong pecks downward. Depending on the species, they fed on rodents and marsupials, ranging in size from like a rabbit to all the way up to a sheep or maybe even small horse-sized prey. This bird was such a large predatory force that it was able to hold its ground against very big mammal predators introduced through the land bridge like dire wolves and saber-toothed tigers for quite a few million years. The Komodo dragon is arguably the most famous large reptile alive today. Everyone knows who the king of the lizards are and how much of a punch they can pack. Meet its big brother, the Megalania. Now, the Megalania actually used to be in the genus Megalania, but it has now since been moved by researchers into Varanus, which is the monitor lizards, which is like your Nile monitors, savanna monitors, water monitors, because they realize it's just a giant extinct monitor. However, because it's been called Megalania for decades and it's in so many textbooks as Megalania, it's just become the defuncto name for it. We don't call it the giant monitor lizard. It just stayed the name, so it's just Megalania. This giant lizard roamed across ancient Australia, and it was kicking around as recent as 40,000 years ago. At the largest, these lizards were estimated to be about 23 feet long and weigh over 1,000 pounds. Whereas the modern day crocodile monitor and Komodo dragon get only about 7 to 8, maybe 8.5 feet long, with a huge Komodo being around 200 pounds max. Now, just like today, where Australia is an isolated island and there's a whole bunch of awesome, unique animals you won't find anywhere else, hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago, same thing happened. They had all of these giant, unique animals you found nowhere else on the planet. There were giant kangaroos, there were large bear-sized, basically wombats called the protodons. There was plenty of food for a massive reptile with large serrated teeth and a very strong bite. Now, certain monitor species like Komodo dragons and Nile monitors have actually been found to have hemotoxic venom in their bite that comes from venom glands along their jaw. It's not really known if Megalania did have venom. Again, just like the scorpion, venom isn't going to fossilize. And there's actually never been a complete or even mostly complete skull found of Megalania. If it did have venom, though, that would make it the largest venomous vertebrate ever known to us. It's very likely that this species, just like modern-day monitor lizards and tegus, used its tongue to help sniff out and find food. This animal was really not designed for sprinting and being a fast runner, so it probably was an ambush predator, and it also probably fed a lot on carrion, just like a lot of modern-day monitor lizards do. Now, just like the extant goanna or monitor lizards in Australia today, this lizard was clearly a dominant force in this isolated Australian landscape. It didn't face much in the way of competition, but there were a few things, one of which was a terrestrial crocodile and then also a marsupial lion. Yes, you heard that right. There once was a lion in Australia that was actually a marsupial, and it had a pouch on its belly. I'll probably have to include that in a part 2, won't I? Funnily enough, there's still stories and apparently evidence that Megalania are still alive in Australia today from locals and heat-exhausted tourists. Obviously, these are just people kind of seeing or believing what they want to, like people that believe in Bigfoot or Nessie or the hash-slinging slasher. For number 2, we move on from animals that for the most part could have been dangerous to humans, but we probably weren't prey for them. The short-faced bear is one of the largest land mammalian carnivores to have ever lived that we know of. It gets its name from the disproportionately shortened snout compared to other bear species. But because we can only see their skulls in the fossil record, it's been proposed by a few researchers that their nose actually wasn't all that short. They are found across North America, but with the biggest density being on the west coast, like around California, and they date from about 1.8 million years ago to as recent as 10 or 11,000 years ago. Now, despite being a North American bear, their closest modern-day cousin is not the grizzly bear or the polar bear, it's actually the spectacled bear from South America. A male spectacled bear can hit over 400 pounds in size, grow 5 to 6 feet long nose to tail, and stand about 2 to 3 feet tall at the shoulders when on all fours. The polar bear, the world's largest living bear species, can reach nearly 1,500 pounds, grows 8 to 10 feet in length, and stands 4 to 5 feet at the shoulder. And then the male short-faced bear tipped the scales at an estimated 1,500 to 2,000 pounds and reached 6 feet at the shoulders on all fours. Standing on its hind legs, a really big male polar bear can hit about 9 to 10.5 feet tall. A giant short-faced bear, on the other hand, standing on its hind legs, can easily hit 12 feet. This was a massive bear with very little in the way of competition, but for its diet, researchers are actually kind of conflicted. Many believe that it was a pure carnivore, but with its huge body, it wasn't really built for chasing prey long distances, nor would it be a great ambusher. Some people believe that it would have used its massive size to just scare off smaller predators like dire wolves and saber-toothed cats from their kills, so it could eat that way, because this bear needed to eat a lot, an estimated nearly 40 pounds of meat daily. The most likely scenario that's been proposed is that this bear, much like the modern-day brown bear, was an opportunistic omnivore, feeding on things like roots, plant materials, carrion, the occasional live prey, garbage from flipped-over cavemen's garbage bins that weren't properly secured, etc. Despite how intimidating this bear was and how big it could get, and really having no natural predators once it got to a decent size, it still had to contend with a lot of things that animals were facing and failing to in this time period, like the introduction of humans and the climate changing and slowly warming. So while giant scorpions and massive bears and huge monitor lizards might be terrifying for some, I don't think any of them are as unsettling as number 1. What's more intimidating than a massive crocodile? Giving that crocodile longer legs, making it fully terrestrial, and mixing its head with a T-Rex. The Fasolasuchus is the largest member of an extinct group of crocodilian cousins from the family Phorusrhacidae that lived through most of the Triassic period about 250 to 200 million years ago. Hanging out in northern South America, Fasolasuchus was the largest and one of the last members to come out of this family. It grew to be over 30 feet in length and could weigh around 3 tons. This makes it the largest terrestrial predator to ever exist outside of theropod dinosaurs like the T-Rex. Just to give a bit of perspective, the largest living reptilian predator is the saltwater crocodile, which maxes out at like 18 to 19 feet and can be about 1,500 to 2,000 pounds. So crocodiles, both living and extinct, have these things called osteoderms, which are basically bony plates that offer great extra protection. Most crocodilians and even other rausuchans have these all along the back. Fasolasuchus, however, only has a single ridge of them right down the spine. And it's thought to have this because even at half grown, it has almost no natural predators big enough to take it down, so it really doesn't need the extra armor. This thing was so massive that it could prey on sauropod dinosaurs, which are kind of the quote-unquote friendly herbivore ones. Now, this creature wasn't really designed for speed. What it did have, though, were an insanely powerful set of jaws. With a skull that was basically the hybrid of a crocodile skull and a T-Rex skull, it probably had one of the strongest bites in history. The animal alive today with the strongest bite force is the saltwater crocodile, with an estimated bite force of about 3,700 pounds per square inch. So just imagine how much damage this skull could have done. With the shortened length but heavier duty skull, the crushing power in these jaws would have been absolutely insane. So those were 5 giant predators we should be very glad aren't around anymore. Like the video if you learned something, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future videos, and comment down below if there's an animal you're very glad isn't around anymore, because I'll most likely be doing a few follow-up videos to this. Thank you to our amazing patrons for your support. If you want to check that out, the link is down in the description. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you later.